So if you're in the over 50 group like I am, this year I'll be 53, I don't know about you, but it sure is getting harder to stay limber, flexible, and keep the strength that I have. So over 50 fitness needs to look differently. One of the things that I really try to do is work and maintain my deep squat. But why is the deep squat so important, and why should I even care about it? Everyone, welcome to the channel. Ed DeBoo, physical therapist, integrated physical therapy in Bellingham, Washington. So if you've been to the channel before, welcome. If this is your first video, I'd also welcome you to your first front row video. We're going to talk about the deep squat and why it's even important to be able to deep squat. So I've been a physical therapist for almost 27 years now, and one of the things that I do is I like to find out when someone comes in, especially with hip, back, knee, ankle pain, is how well they're moving. And so I'll have them do a simple squat test to see how far they can get down. If you can full squat, that typically tells me that you have no major restrictions in your ankles, knees, hips, and the lower spine, the lumbar spine is able to flex. So a deep squat is a good way to quickly identify areas of restrictions that might be the weak link in their biomechanical chain. When I watch somebody squat, I get an idea of how far they can go. So in this example, this poor guy can only go to about 90 degrees. And at this point, we don't know what's limiting him. But since this video is all about ankle limitations and deep squat, what you want to do now is you'll notice there's a 2x4 underneath there. And now he can drop down a little bit further into his squat. It's beyond 90 degrees if you notice. So what that tells us is that he had limitations in his ankle dorsiflexion that was limiting his ability to deep squat. Luckily I had a leg laying around the house. So in the example I just showed you, if someone can only squat down to about here and then tends to fall over, it's because their ankle right through here lacks the ability to dorsiflex. So the ability of the foot to come up towards the head is called dorsiflexion. And what needs to happen is this talus, and what I've done is I've put it in orange here. The talus has to glide underneath this ankle mortise. So it has to glide posteriorly in order for us to have good dorsiflexion. Oftentimes what happens in the clinic, if I've seen you in the clinic, I'll poke right around at this talus and maybe even do a little mobilization at the ankle because this talus gets jammed in this mortise. And when it gets jammed, then it usually lacks a dorsiflexion. And why is that such a big deal? Because that can affect your gait pattern, it can affect your squat, and eventually that can lead to changes in range of motion of your knee and ankle. So we'll talk about different ways first to test your dorsiflexion to see if it is the talus or if it's more of the posterior connective tissue back here, including the Achilles tendon, the gastroc, and the soleus. In that situation, you would just stretch it out. All right, let's get to work. Although this video is about squats, a big take-home message from this video is that as much range of motion as you can get from a joint, the less likely it is to have arthritic changes in the future. So remember, if you're over 50, life happens, right? But you want as much range of motion in every joint as you can. Because of the way the nutrient flow in the joint works, you're less likely to have arthritic changes in the future, especially your 60, 70, 80-year-old self will thank you. When someone comes into the clinic, one of the first things I do is I'll check to see how they squat. And I'm gonna demonstrate to you, a lot of times, if someone can squat down to right about there, there could be a lot of limitations. It could be hip, it could be knee, reason why they can't get down lower. This video, we're gonna talk specifically about ankle limitations, which I see a lot. So how can you tell if that person that just squatted has an ankle limitation? You need a 2x4. Now I have my heels on the 2x4, so what I've done is I've changed the angle of my ankle a little bit, so there's less dorsiflexion that's involved. And now that same client, I'm gonna have do a squat. Now if they can come down a little bit further into their squat with the 2x4, then what that tells me is that they have restrictions in the ankle, and that's what's limiting them from going down further. So now there's a couple things that can happen at the ankle. It could be a joint restriction, which is the talus, like I showed you earlier with that model, or it could be more of a soft tissue restriction, probably the Achilles or the soleus or the gastroc. So let's do a quick test to figure out which one it is. So we've already determined that ankle limitation is what's preventing me from squatting down deeper. So like I said, we could have a joint restriction, which is the talus, or we could just have tightness back and through here. So what you'll do is you'll get yourself on a chair, and then I want you to keep your heel down, but I want you to drive that knee right over your second toe. So not out to the side, but just try to bring it straight over. And go over as far as you can. And then when you get to the end range, I want you to tell me what you feel. If you feel more of a tissue tightness back through here, that means that talus is working just fine. But what's happening is that for whatever reason you've got tightness, probably of the gastroc or the soleus, possibly the Achilles tendon. So in that situation, as long as you get to the end range and you feel a stretch, then you can go ahead and push into that stretch just a little bit, and I would hold that with a fair amount of pressure, 15, 20 seconds, and then you can back off and go into it again. And in this situation, we're stretching more of the Achilles and the soleus because the gastroc comes up here and crosses. To stretch the gastroc, that's a little bit more of your old school stretch that we already know how to do, where you just come up against a wall with your knee straight and you just get a calf stretch, and you're going to feel that a little bit higher up. Now the second scenario is you come into here and you're like, well, I'm not really getting much of a stretch, but I am feeling some restriction in that talus. And remember, let's do a quick review. I got the talus here in orange, and as I go into dorsiflexion, that talus disappears in this ankle mortise underneath through here. And what happens a lot of times is the talus gets restricted and it does not glide posteriorly as I go into dorsiflexion. So if you are getting compression in the front of your ankle when you're doing that test, a couple things. If you're seeing a therapist, ask them to adjust or mobilize your talus for you. But let's say you're not seeing somebody, I will show you a way which you can do it at home. I'll be honest, it's not quite as effective, but at least it's better than nothing. So you're going to want to wrap that band around something that's pretty solid and immovable. And what I did was I put a little black dot right where my talus is. So you're going to put your foot in here, and the idea is you're going to walk it out. There has to be a fair amount of tension. The next question I get asked is, how do I know if there's enough tension on here? Well, because when you go into your dorsiflexion, if there's enough posterior pressure on the talus, driving it posterior, remember the talus has to go inside that mortise, and that's what that band is trying to do. So as I do that, I should then get more of a stretch feel. Now it might not be 100% stretch, but it should definitely be less of that joint compression in the front if the band is tight enough. If it's not, you may have to grab it and go a little bit further up and then drive that knee forward. Drive that knee forward, hopefully get a little bit of a stretch feel into it. You might get some compression, but you should feel more of a stretch if you're doing it correctly. And then you're going to hold that for about a 15-20 second count and then back off, and we're going to mobilize that with movement. And I'd probably do 3 to 6 reps, just kind of based upon how you feel. If you're finding the video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing, and ding, turn on your notifications so you never miss another one of our videos. So I put a black dot right where the talus is, and so you just basically want to get this right in the crease. And then we're going to walk it out until there's enough tension. And remember, you know it's enough tension, you want to get it right in that crease. You know there's enough tension so that when you lock it forward in dorsiflexion, that you start to actually feel a little bit of a posterior stretch and not just that ankle compression. So after you've worked on ankle dorsiflexion, you should be able to drop down a little bit deeper into your squat. And that's really what you want to try to do, is get as low as you can into your squat. Now a lot of times people will get here and they'll fall over. It's okay to grab onto something, but you really want to try to get that butt down as far as you can. And then we go next level and start working on trying to open up that thoracic spine a little bit, which I need to work on as well too, and get a little bit deeper into our squat with a little bit of a straighter back. For those of you who are over 50 that are watching this, if you want to take your health to the next level, please check out livewell50.com. I'll put a link down below, and it's all about aging strong and taking your health and your fitness to the next level. So check it out. We got a founder special going on right now. Money back guarantee, so you really have nothing to lose. So you should have the tools now to increase your dorsiflexion if that's the limitation in your squat. Try to maintain a deep squat. And I understand that you may have a knee replacement or hip replacement, but within your particular structure, try to maintain as much range of motion as you can. Now you may not be able to squat all the way down completely. However, whatever range of motion you do have, if you don't try to maintain that, unfortunately, it will get tighter and you will lose what little motion that you do have. All right, if there's any questions, leave them down below. Good luck, and let me know how your squat goes.